Hello, and sorry we're filming today under the glare of the electric light, but it has been so grim outside for the past week that we haven't had enough sunshine. So I'm afraid you've got me in sort of unremitting relief. Apologies for that. I've had a little bit of luck. There isn't much about, it must be said, but I did buy a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I found these online. Very fortunate to find these online. They were being sold by a chap in Scotland, and both very interesting, but both for different reasons. Yet there is something that ties them in common. The first thing is they're both beautiful buckles, which is the first reason I bought them. Never mind how academic it is. Is it beautiful? If it is beautiful, that's a very good reason to buy it. But this lovely buckle had a mark on which I hadn't seen before, and it's we'll look at it in close up. It's I and MC, small c, so muck, and an E, I McE, and I thought that would be quite easy to trace. So I bid for it anyway and bought it, and then I went through the process of trying to look it up. Thought it might be Scottish Provincial. Drew an absolute blank in that reference work, and so I turned to my trusty, I have it here before me, my trusty copy of, shouldn't really advertise other people's books, Jackson's, which I've had, according to the inscription in front, because my memory's terrible, for the last 32 years, which ages me, unfortunately. I remember carrying the thing back after a 2-mile walk from college, and it's bloody heavy book it is too. So I looked in this book, and I suspected this was Scottish, not just because it's got muck as part of the maker's mark, although that is quite a good indicator. There are London goldsmiths and Canadian goldsmiths and Australian goldsmiths, all with Scottish ancestry, that move and work in these different places. So it doesn't absolutely mean it's going to be Scottish, but there are Scottish features about this buckle, the way it's made, the feel of it, and the fact that I bought it in Scotland alongside this one. They're both from the same collection, and this one I knew to be Scottish. So I had a look. The mark wasn't anywhere in the book, but there is more to this book than just hallmarks. There are lists of registered goldsmiths working in different provincial centres. Now, if the mark you're looking up is distinctive enough, so it isn't, TS or WC or IR, which are very commonplace ones. If it's unusual like this, there is a chance, albeit a slim chance, that you can go through these lists and find makers whose marks aren't illustrated in the book, but we know were working and their name fits. And sometimes you can find 2 or 3 people working at the same time. If you're extremely lucky, you will go through these lists and you will find just one person, one candidate for this mark, which is pretty definitive in my book. I went through all the Edinburgh lists, because Edinburgh, you must start off with we all like rarities, but you must start off thinking it's going to be the most commonplace and ubiquitous of things. No Edinburgh makers with those initials working at this period. This will date to between 1760 and maybe 1770, 1775 at a push. So you don't look at any silversmiths after 1775, but you do look 30 or 40 years earlier, because it's entirely possible that this is made by a goldsmith that's registered much earlier on at the end of their life. So I was looking between 1720 and 1775 for any goldsmith that was working with these initials. Nothing in Edinburgh. I'd excluded meticulously all the really rare and unusual provincial centres, and then I thought, well, I haven't looked at Glasgow. This is the Glasgow list beside me, and I went through it meticulously. There is one match for these initials, not 2 matches, not no matches, but one. So it is this maker, and it is James McEwen. And what's really nice is he was registered in 1763. And this is made plumb in 1760 to 1770. So it's when he would have been working. It's absolutely perfect fit for him. There are later marks that are ascribed to McKee alongside a Glasgow town mark. They omit the E and the I has turned to a J. These are later punches, maybe from the 1770s, 1780s. So what we can say from this, and what's really exciting, is this is probably the first version of his McEwen's Maker's Mark, which is absolutely fantastic. So not only is this a lovely buckle that was just sold as a Georgian buckle, now I can say it's a Glasgow buckle, and Glasgow buckles, believe me, are pretty rare, even single ones of them. But this is the first Scottish Glasgow buckle by James McEwen with that early mark. So this is the fun of collecting. Not only do you get a fabulous Georgian silver buckle, which even if you didn't know who it was by, would be fabulous, you then find out it's Scottish, you then find out it's provincial, it's a piece of early Glasgow silver, and whilst later Glasgow silver does turn up in quite large quantities, certainly from the 19th century, the 18th century stuff, particularly pre-about 1770, is rare, it's proper provincial silver. But then you unveil a completely new maker, or a new maker's mark for a known maker. What you must do in these instances, because, you know, I may not have this forever, it may get sold, it may get swapped for something, you never know, is you immediately, and I know all the good dealers do this anyway, so I'm letting all the tricks out of the bag, you write it down. You copy the mark out as you see it on the object. You write what the object is that you've seen it on, and you relate it to that entry. So forever and a day now, even if, you know, my mind goes and I forget, or I move this on, I will be able, when I see this, if I see this mark again on something else, which may not be a buckle, might be something that isn't even typically Scottish, I can go back to this and say, know who that is. So that was a fascinating discovery, and that just shows you slightly the methodology, because people say to me, how do you keep finding these rare things? Well, there is a lot of looking that's involved in doing it, but there's also a lot of note-taking and recording. And if you remember from the York video from a few weeks ago, I bought a wonderful, rare, early York tumbler only because I'd made a note. I wonder if I've got it here. I'd made a note of that maker's mark on something else. There we go. I'd even taken a picture of it that time. I'd made that note 10 or 15 years earlier and stuck it in here. Not thinking I'd ever see it again, but I did. So it's part diligence. It's having an enthusiasm for this stuff. If you've got a passion and an enthusiasm and you want to keep learning, it will eventually pay off. Don't do it because it will eventually pay off. That's the wrong reason to do it. Do it because you love it. But the rewards are there. I think maybe the antiques, maybe I'm being fanciful, but maybe the antiques gods or the spirits of collectors that have gone before us look down occasionally when they're not doubled up laughing at what we're doing, and they say, okay, you can have that. You've worked for that. You deserve that. But let's not be fanciful. Let's look at this second buckle, and I'll look at these more in detail with the close-up camera because I think that's more rewarding. This is a pattern of buckle I've had before. I stupidly had a pair of these and sold them and wish I hadn't. And that pair were marked for Glasgow. So I was pretty sure that this would be a Glasgow buckle, but it's got a mark JL on it. And that had been ascribed by my mentor on a pair of buckles he had as John Leslie of Aberdeen. And it's not a typical John Leslie mark because most of John Leslie's marks are IL, but I was quite happy to go along with that. But when I got this and I looked at it and it was, you know, it's identical to the Glasgow pair I had, it gave me a niggle. So I went on a Little double check, always good to double check, because people are always turning things up. And actually, since my friend passed away and he'd done his research, a mark had come on the Scottish database for, and I've got it here, James Lockhart of Glasgow. Now, he started off, he was in 1707, very early in the reign of Queen Anne. But as I say, goldsmiths can have long working lives. Now, the marks that are recorded on a spoon alongside his Glasgow town mark, so it's indisputable that they're his marks of that period. The L has certain characteristics, and we'll look at that. It has a very sharp upturned serif to the bottom of the L. It has a long outstretching line to the back. It is the identical punch on this buckle. So the first thing is, we know that Lockhart was working for at least 50 years after he registered. Young man working the length of his lifetime. But what's really interesting on this only this pattern of buckle I've seen it on, and only on Scottish buckles, is there is a hidden design. There is a secret in the buckle. And it's probably not obvious if I hold it up and look at it, but here and here, there is a little man's face just chased into the silver. And if you weren't looking for it, you might miss it. So it's a little bit secret. Why would you do it? I mean, otherwise it's gadrooned and it's got flowers, but this man's face is quite deliberate. I believe, and certainly my mentor believed, this was a little secret Jacobite sign, because we're only about 10-15 years after the 1745 rebellion. Certainly you get, as we looked at with picture back spoons, little political messages on the diebacks on the reverse of teaspoons. So why not a little political secret message on your shoe buckles that a like-minded person, only a like-minded person, could look and think, I can see that Jock has Jacobite sympathies too. Look at his shoe buckles. So this is interesting because this is, again, a rare Glasgow maker, but it's got a Jacobite connection to it. I do wish I hadn't sold the other pair I had, because now I'd be able to compare the two. But, that's it. That's the life of an antiques dealer, littered with regret. But I'm really pleased. I'm sorry I've gone on for so long, but I'm really pleased to show you these. They didn't cost fortunes, but they are both very rare things. You would struggle to find comparatives in museums in Scotland of these. Certainly for this Jacobite one you would. And it just shows it is there. Not in the quantity that it used to be, sadly. But if you go out and you look, and more importantly, if you have a passion and you study these things, you will eventually reap the rewards now and again. Or you might get legged over by some unscrupulous bastard. I mean, it's the world of antiques, isn't it? But that's enough for now. We'll do the close-ups. You'll see all the detail in those buckles, although there'll probably be a hideous shadow from the light. But until next week, hopefully in sunshine, I'll see you again. Good antiques hunting and goodbye.